2027 election. Will Goodluck Jonathan make the presidential ballot? Welcome to Nigeria Wave TV. If you are new to our channel, please subscribe and don't forget to like and share our stories. Thank you. The leadership crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party took another dramatic turn on July 31, 2026, after the Kabiru Turaki-led Interim National Working Committee announced that it had submitted the presidential nomination of former President Goodluck Jonathan and the names of the party's other candidates for the 2027 general elections to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). The development has reignited political debate over whether Jonathan will eventually appear on the ballot in the 2027 presidential election or whether his nomination will become another casualty of the PDP's prolonged internal crisis. Addressing journalists in Abuja, the committee's National Publicity Secretary, Comrade Ememobong, said the faction resorted to manual submission after INEC allegedly declined to issue the electronic access codes required for uploading candidates' names. According to him, the Electoral Act 2026 permits manual submission, making the refusal to issue electronic access codes an administrative matter that does not invalidate the nomination process. Ememobong disclosed that the documents submitted included Jonathan's presidential nomination as well as the names of the party's governorship, National Assembly, and State House of Assembly candidates. He added that although INEC had acknowledged receipt of the documents, the commission had continued to withhold recognition from the Turaki-led interim leadership. The PDP spokesperson warned INEC against publishing any candidate list other than the one submitted by the faction, insisting that it was prepared to exhaust every constitutional and legal avenue to protect what it described as the authentic leadership of the party. He explained that the Interim National Working Committee emerged from a Supreme Court judgment which, according to the faction, left the PDP without a legally recognized national leadership. He argued that the party's board of trustees, acting alongside the requisitioned National Executive Committee meeting, subsequently constituted the interim leadership. Ememobong also revealed that the faction had appealed a Federal High Court judgment relating to the party's leadership dispute, maintaining that the ruling conflicted with earlier decisions of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. He further accused INEC of compromising its neutrality by allegedly withholding material facts during court proceedings and ignoring congresses it had monitored, warning that such actions could undermine public confidence in Nigeria's electoral process. The faction also alleged that the PDP had become the first target of a broader campaign to weaken opposition parties and entrench a one-party political system ahead of the 2027 general elections. While the announcement has generated renewed excitement among some PDP supporters and sections of the opposition, political observers believe Jonathan's path to the ballot remains far from certain. Beyond the submission of his nomination lies a more fundamental question: which faction of the PDP does the law recognize as the legitimate leadership of the party? The PDP has remained deeply divided for months, with rival groups laying claim to the party's national leadership following differing interpretation of various court judgments. Although the Turaki-led committee insists it is the authentic leadership of the PDP, INEC has reportedly declined to recognize it as the party's official national leadership. This remains the biggest single obstacle to Jonathan's reported candidacy. According to some political observers, the issue before the PDP has gone beyond the identity of its presidential candidate. The central question is now who possesses the legal authority to act on behalf of the party. Until that issue is conclusively resolved, every action taken by any of the rival factions remains vulnerable to legal challenge. INEC's acknowledgement of receiving the nomination documents has equally generated mixed interpretations. Election experts point out that acknowledging receipts of nomination documents should not be mistaken for accepting or validating the nomination. Under Nigeria's electoral framework, the Commission is expected to verify whether candidates were nominated by officials legally recognized to represent their political parties before publishing the final list of candidates. Should INEC reject the nomination submitted by the Turaki faction or recognize a different list presented by another PDP leadership, another round of litigation appears inevitable. Such legal battles could ultimately determine not only Jonathan's political future but also the future of the PDP as it prepares for the 2027 general elections. Unlike President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has repeatedly declared his intention to seek a second term, the former president has neither publicly declared his interest in returning to the presidency nor personally confirmed acceptance of the nomination reportedly submitted on his behalf. The silence has further fueled intense political speculation. While some analysts believe Jonathan may simply be monitoring developments within the PDP before making his position known, others suggest his nomination could be part of ongoing negotiations aimed at uniting opposition forces ahead of the 2027 elections. Consequently, questions remain over whether Jonathan personally authorized the nomination, fulfilled all statutory requirements, or intends to pursue the presidential ticket if the nomination is eventually recognized by INEC. Some persons also insist that until the former president publicly clarifies his position, uncertainty will continue to surround his reported candidacy. Before the party's leadership dispute, constitutional issues may also re-emerge should Jonathan eventually become the PDP's recognized presidential candidate. Although the Supreme Court had previously dismissed attempts to stop him from contesting elections after completing the tenure of the late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and subsequently winning the 2011 presidential elections, debates surrounding presidential tenure have continued to feature in Nigeria's political discourse. However, many constitutional lawyers maintain that existing judicial decisions favor Jonathan's eligibility should he decide to contest the presidency again. Political realities also present another challenge. Now, the opposition remains fragmented with several influential political figures expected to seek the presidency in 2027. Even if the legal hurdles are cleared, the PDP would still need to resolve its leadership crisis, reconcile its various factions, and build consensus around a single presidential candidate capable of leading a united opposition. Failure to achieve internal unity could significantly weaken the party's electoral chances, regardless of who eventually emerges as its flag bearer. One possible outcome is that the court may eventually affirm the Turaki-led Interim National Working Committee as the legitimate leadership of the PDP, compelling INEC to recognize the candidates it submitted. Another possibility is that INEC may continue recognizing a different leadership structure effectively, rendering Jonathan's nomination by the Turaki faction invalid. There is also the prospect of a political settlement within the PDP that could produce a consensus leadership and possibly a fresh nomination process. Equally important is the possibility that Jonathan himself may ultimately decline the nomination if he has no intention of returning to active electoral politics. For now, the submission of Jonathan's name represents only the beginning of what could become a prolonged political and legal process. His appearance on the 2027 presidential ballot is therefore far from guaranteed. Before Nigerians can expect to see Goodluck Jonathan among the presidential candidates in the next general election, three critical issues must first be resolved: the recognition of the PDP leadership by INEC, the conclusion of ongoing legal disputes over the control of the party, and Jonathan's own acceptance of the nomination. Until those questions are answered, The former president remains a proposed presidential candidate nominated by a faction whose legitimacy is still being contested. Consequently, while Jonathan's return to the presidential race cannot be ruled out, it remains too early to conclude that he will feature on the ballot when Nigerians head to the polls in 2027.